Because you know when someone finally tells the truth they have kept silent about for years? Not because someone forces them, because there comes a moment when keeping it costs more than revealing it. And on that day in August of 2025, in that studio in Los Angeles, in that podcast called Call Her Daddy, Ayesha Curry was about to have that moment. You can perceive when there is a place that is safe for truth, when there is a person who listens without judgment, when there is space for vulnerability. And Call Her Daddy with Alex Cooper is such a space. Ayesha sits in front of the camera. Alex Cooper, the host, receives her with warmth and authenticity. There is no judgment in the room. There are only two women talking about life. And Alex asks the question that changes everything. Before you became Ayesha Curry, who did you want to be? You can perceive when there is a question that opens a door. When someone invites you genuinely to be honest about who you were before life happened. Ayesha breathes and begins to speak about life before life. I didn't want kids, she says. Simple, directly. I didn't want to get married. You can perceive when there is a confession that is honest. When there is a truth that is so pure that the entire world would feel it if it were listening. I thought I was going to be a career girl, and that's it, Ayesha continues. I had my eyes set on my goals. I was never the little girl that dreamt about the wedding dress and all of that. And there is a quality to her voice that is different. It is not bitterness, it is reflection. It is a woman who understands her own journey with clarity. You can perceive when there is a person who understands sacrifice because she has lived it. When there is a woman who can say this because she knows the cost of having said yes when she planned to say maybe. Ayesha continues telling her story. How she met Steph. How they were young. How they married at 22 years old. After we got married, we found out we were pregnant with our daughter so quickly, she says. I didn't even have time to think about what I wanted anymore. There is something bittersweet in this confession. It is not regret. It is honest recognition of sacrifice. It's so interesting, she continues. I spent my entire life trying to work towards something, and then it kind of just disappeared. I didn't think twice about it. You can perceive when there is a woman who understands what she lost and also what she gained. When she can hold both truths simultaneously without lying about either one. Alex listens with complete attention. She does not interrupt. She lets Ayesha tell her own story. Ayesha speaks about the years that followed. Motherhood. Marriage. A life that was completely different from the plan. I remember there being a shift, she continues, and being like, I have goals for myself. This doesn't feel right. I love being a mom, but I love doing other things too. And I need to get my shit together and figure out what that looks like for myself now. You can perceive when there is a truth that is liberating. When a woman can say, yes, I love my children. Yes, I love my husband. But I also love things for myself. And this is not a betrayal of the marriage. It is honesty about being a complete person who cannot be only a wife and mother. Ayesha speaks about finding balance, how she began to pursue her own dreams while maintaining marriage and motherhood, how she learned that she can be everything simultaneously. Mother, wife, woman with her own ambition. But there is something that she still carries. There is a confession that still weighs on her. You actually don't know what you want, she says. And there is wisdom in these words. Like, I thought I knew. I had it all planned out. And then life happened differently. You can perceive when there is a woman who makes peace with the fact that the plan was not the true one, that the unexpected life was the right life. But I don't regret it, Isha continues. Like, I have 4 beautiful kids. I have a husband that loves me. I have a life that I wouldn't trade. And there is truth here too. It is not falsity. It is not an attempt to fix what she said before. It is simply an understanding that yes, she lost the original plan, but she gained something that the original plan would not have given her. You can perceive when there is a person who can hold complexity, who can say, this was a sacrifice, and it was worth it. I'm not happy, despite the sacrifice. I am happy, and I recognize the sacrifice. Alex continues to ask questions. Good questions. Questions that allow Isha to be increasingly honest. Isha speaks about the pressure of being an NBA wife. How difficult it is. How there are aspects she cannot communicate to Steph because he cannot really understand. How there is loneliness in her position. He tries to resonate with me, she says, but he just can't. He's like, it's not true, so why does it matter? And I'm like, listen to how it makes me feel. You can perceive when there is a real challenge in the relationship, when there is something that a partner cannot understand because he is in a different position. And this too is a truth that needs to be spoken. Because marriage is not easy. Real marriage is this: 2 people trying to understand one another even when they cannot be in each other's place. Ish also speaks about social pressure. How there are always voices that judge. How there is constantly an expectation. How exhausting it is to be watched all the time. But she also speaks about gratitude. About the fact that yes, life was unexpected. But unexpected is not synonymous with wrong. You can perceive when there is a person who can bring together legitimate resentment with genuine gratitude, who does not need to choose between my sacrifice was wrong or my sacrifice was right, who can say my sacrifice was real and my life is good. The podcast continues. Alex and Isha talk about the beauty of honesty, about the importance of women confessing what they actually feel instead of pretending that everything is perfect. And there is a moment when Isha says something that sums it all up. I think it's important to be real, she says, because there are so many women who are in the same position I am, who think they're the only ones, who had to sacrifice, who think they're the only ones who sometimes wonder, what if? You can perceive when there is a person who understands that her honesty is a gift to other people, that by speaking her truth, she allows others to speak theirs as well. And I just want to say, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to acknowledge the sacrifice. It doesn't mean you don't love your family. It doesn't mean you regret your choices. It just means you're human. And there is freedom in these words, for women who are watching, for women who feel alone in the complexity of their own feelings. The podcast ends. Isha leaves the studio. She has breathed. She has finally told the truth she had been keeping for 14 years. She does not know that this truth is about to echo throughout the entire world. She does not know that clips of her confession are about to go viral. She does not know that social media is about to explode with opinions about her marriage. She does not know that the entire world is about to judge her relationship and her husband. You can perceive when there is a moment that is before everything changes, when there is a person who tells the truth without understanding the magnitude of that truth. Isha merely said what she felt. She was merely honest. She merely allowed herself to be vulnerable. But the world is not ready for honesty. The world is ready for drama, for criticism, for judgment. And in just a few hours, the podcast will be released on streaming platforms. Viral clips will appear. People who know nothing about Ayesha's life will begin to judge. But for now, in this moment, Ayesha only knows that she has finally breathed. She has finally told the truth. She has finally let the world know who she was before being Ayesha Curry. And that is what really matters. Because you know when something that was private becomes public. When a personal confession becomes a global debate. When the entire world believes it has the right to have an opinion about a life that is not theirs. The podcast is released. Clips begin to go viral. Within just a few hours, Ayesha's confession is on every social media platform, on every celebrity news outlet, in every conversation on the internet. You can perceive when there is a moment that is a point of no return. When a word spoken in a private environment suddenly belongs to the entire world. And the world is not ready for honesty. The world wants drama. The first comments begin simply. People share the clip. They say, "Wow, this is honest." But then comes the judgment. She doesn't know what she wants in life. How can she say this about her marriage? She's embarrassing, Steph. Why would she confess this publicly? You can perceive when there is a shift in tone. When a conversation that began as, "This is vulnerable," becomes, "This is disrespectful." Criticism grows. It is not just an occasional comment. It is a wave. It is a collective movement of judgment. People who have never spoken with Ayesha. People who have never met Steph. People who do not live their marriage. All of them have an opinion. All of them have criticism. All of them are certain that they know what happens in their relationship. You can perceive when there is judgment that is toxic. When it is not a conversation, it is an attack. Comments become increasingly aggressive. She doesn't deserve him. Steph could have done better. She should be grateful instead of complaining. This woman has no idea what real problems are. Stop embarrassing your man on a podcast. You can perceive when there is violence in words, when there is aggression that tries to diminish a person because she dared to be honest. Hashtags begin to go viral. Ayesha Curry is a trending topic, but it is not a good trend. It is a trend of criticism, of judgment, of condemnation. Basketball fans enter the conversation. They say that Steph deserved better. They say that Ayesha wasted the opportunity to have a man like Steph. You can perceive when there is veiled misogyny, when men judge a woman for not being happy with the sacrifice of an entire life, when the world expects a woman to simply accept the changed plan and remain grateful. There are comments that are particularly cruel. If I were Steph, I would leave her. She wants attention, that's all. Poor Steph, dealing with this ungrateful woman. She should shut up and be a good wife. You can perceive when there is hatred that is pure. When there are people who are furious because a woman dared to say that marriage came at a price. Celebrity media picks up the story. Major publications begin to publish articles. It is not Ayesha reveals her feelings. It is Ayesha Curry reveals she didn't want to marry Steph, with sensationalist headlines that make it seem like she wants a divorce. You can perceive when there is sensationalism that distorts truth, when honesty is transformed into scandal, when vulnerability is transformed into drama. Sports radio stations begin to debate. Male commentators take offense. How can a man who received such a comment continue with his life? How can Steph focus on basketball when his wife is saying this? No one asks, how does Ayesha feel? How is she dealing with this? You can perceive when there is dehumanization, when a person is transformed into a character in a story that is not true. Ayesha's friends reach out to her. They say, "You shouldn't have said this. You should have stayed quiet. Did you know it would be like this?" The pressure grows. It is not just from the world. It is from people close to her, too. You can perceive when there is isolation that develops, when the entire world is against you, and even friends suggest that you should have stayed quiet. But there is also defense. There are women who stand up. Some women share similar stories. They say, "I felt this too. I sacrificed too. I didn't want this in the beginning either." Feminists point out she is being honest about the experience of women. Why is this bad? Others say, marriage is complex. People can love their partners and recognize sacrifice. This is not a contradiction. You can perceive when there is a more nuanced conversation, when there are people who understand that honesty is not an attack. It is just honesty. But the voice of these people is small compared to the hatred. The pressure on Steph is particular. He is an athlete. He is a man. The world expects him to say something. The world expects him to defend her. The world expects him to judge her. The world expects something. Sports. Commentators talk about the impact of this statement on Steph's career. They say it will destroy his focus, that it is a distraction, that Ayesha should be thinking about family instead of promoting herself on a podcast. You can perceive when there is a double standard that is obvious. When a man can talk about anything, but a woman talking about her own experience is selfishness. Steph is confronted. Journalists ask questions after games. Fans question. Commentators debate. And Steph does not respond. He simply plays. He simply continues living. But there is real pressure. There is real weight. There is real expectation that he should do something. The pressure grows by days, by weeks. You can perceive when there is a moment when criticism reaches its peak, when it cannot get worse, when the entire world is shouting. And at this moment, someone dares to attack further. Rapper Killer Mike publishes a comment. He says that Ayesha is embarrassing Steph. He says she wants to be like Glorilla. You can perceive when there is an attack that is a crossing of the line, when a famous person adds their hatred to collective hatred, when the world becomes more dangerous because there is a voice with a platform. But at this moment, too, something changes. Because Steph finally responds, and his response transforms everything. Because you know when someone finally speaks? When silence is broken? When a response comes at the right moment? The entire world is shouting. Criticism is at its maximum. Pressure is unbearable. And at this moment, Steph is confronted. Someone mentions Killer Mike's comment. Says that the rapper criticized Ayesha. Says that the entire world is talking. Asks what Steph is going to do about it. You can perceive when there is a moment that is a real test. When a man can agree with the critics or defend his woman. When a marriage is truly tested, Steph has a choice. He can ignore it. He can respond with anger. He can try to explain. He can let Ayesha defend herself alone. But Steph does something different. Steph responds, but not as the world expects. He does not argue. He does not defend his honor. He does not try to convince critics that they are wrong. He simply responds. And his response changes everything. Steph writes, "Nah, not you, Mike. Stay in your lane and let God keep blessing me like He is. We are good over here." You can perceive when there is a response that is masterfully simple. When a person does not try to convince, simply declares their truth. 3 parts, 3 sentences, everything that needs to be said. Nah, not you, Mike. This is a dismissal. This is a direct rejection of criticism. This is a man saying, Your voice does not matter here. You can perceive when there is authority that comes from security. When a person does not need to be aggressive, simply needs to be sure. Stay in your lane. This is a redirection. This is Steph telling the world, my marriage is not your business. Your job is to stay in your own path. You can perceive when there is a limit that is established. When a person says clearly, you will go this far, no further. Let God keep blessing me like He is. This is acknowledgement of blessing. This is Steph saying, my life is blessed. My marriage is blessed. Your judgment does not change this. You can perceive when there is a person who has faith, who believes that what matters is not what the world says. It is what God knows. We are good over here. This is a final declaration of peace. This is Steph telling the entire world, we are well. We do not need your validation. We are not looking for your approval. You can perceive when there is simplicity that is revolutionary. When 3 words say everything that needs to be said, the response is not long. It is not argumentative. It is not defensive. It is simply, we are good, and the entire world hears. You can perceive when there is a response that completely repositions a conversation. When the narrative changes not because it was convinced. It changes because a person with authority simply declared the truth. Social media changes. People begin to question their own criticism. They begin to understand that maybe they criticized something they did not understand. Some see Steph's response and say, this is disrespect to Killer Mike. This is aggressive. But most see the response and understand what Steph was really saying. My marriage is not yours. I will not discuss this with you. It is closed. You can perceive when there is silence that follows a declaration of truth. When the world does not know what to say, because a person has already said everything that needed to be said. Killer Mike, to his credit, later apologizes. He publishes on a public platform, I apologize to Steph and Ayesha. It wasn't my damn business. My wife was right when she told me so. You can perceive when there is a man who can recognize when he was wrong, when he can apologize publicly. But the most important thing is Steph's response. It is simple. It is gracious. Because Steph responds, man, I appreciate that. We all good. God bless. You can perceive when there is a person who can accept an apology without needing to prolong the drama, when he is simply okay with it and moves forward. This is maturity. This is what the 50-plus audience recognizes as true strength. It is not aggression. It is not a need to be right. It is not a desire to have the last word. It is simply, you recognized the error. We accept it. Let us all move forward. The conversation changes now. People begin to defend Ayesha. Women share stories of their own sacrifice. They say, she was brave to speak. She helped many of us by being honest. Analysts begin to talk about the Curry relationship differently, not as a scandal, as a model of a relationship that can contain difficult truth and still be strong. You can perceive when there is a moment that is a turning point, when one response changes the narrative completely. Because Steph's response did not convince the critics, but it allowed the world to understand. This is a secure man. This is a man who does not need to defend his marriage because he knows his marriage is strong. And if his marriage is strong enough for Steph to be at peace, then maybe there is no real crisis. Maybe there is just real honesty. You can perceive when there is logic that is silent but powerful. When a person's actions demonstrate a truth that words could never convince. Sports commentators begin to speak differently. They begin to say, let's respect their privacy. This is their marriage. They begin to understand that the pressure they put was unjustified. Celebrity media reduces coverage because the narrative changes, because there is no more drama if the couple is united. You can perceive when there is a moment when collective judgment finally recognizes its own error, when the entire world feels foolish for having attacked something it did not understand. Ayesha, at this moment, breathes, because she knows that her marriage is being defended not only by her husband, it is being defended by the couple's own strength, by the peace that radiates from them. You can perceive when there is a woman who sees her husband defend her relationship with silence and action, when she understands that she is safe, because this is what it means to be loved. It is not having a husband who is in constant defense. It is having a husband who is so secure that he does not need to defend himself. Steph continues to live. He continues to play. He continues to love Ayesha. Because for a mature man, this is what matters. Not words, not argumentation, not a need to be right. Just the continuous choice to be with the person he loves. And this is what the world finally understood. Because you know when the moment comes to understand what really happened, when you can finally breathe and look back. Weeks pass. Criticism decreases. The world moves on to the next. Celebrity scandal. But what matters is what remained, what changed, what was learned. You can perceive when there is a moment that transforms a relationship, when a crisis tests what is real, when both come out the other side not only together, but renewed. This is what happened with Steph and Ayesha. Ayesha confessed a difficult truth. The world attacked. Steph defended. And in that process, both understood something profound about what it means to be married. You can perceive when there is an ijuara understanding that is silent but transformative. Because here is what no one was talking about. Ayesha was not attacking the marriage. She was being honest about her journey. And Steph was not defending the marriage because it was in crisis. He was defending the marriage because it was his. And he knew the truth. And he knew that the truth from that woman was the most beautiful thing he had ever had. You can perceive when there is a person who understands that honesty is a gift, that vulnerability is strength, that confessing sacrifice is not weakness, it is courage. Months later, when the pressure diminishes, Ayesha reflects on her confession. "I was terrified," she says. "I thought people would judge me. I thought Steph would be upset. I thought the entire world would condemn me." You can perceive when there is a woman who expected the worst, who was prepared to be rejected, who was brave despite her fear. "But what happened was different," she continues, "because Steph defended me, and not with words, with presence, with peace, with the simplicity of saying, 'We are good over here.'" You can perceive when there is a woman who understands what it means to be loved despite uncomfortable honesty, when she knows that her husband sees her completely, including the sacrifices she made, and still chooses her. Steph, for his part, also reflects. "Ayesha was brave to tell the truth," he says, "and my job as a husband is not to convince the world that she is wrong. It is simply to be with her, to defend the marriage, and to continue living well." You can perceive when there is a man who understands that real masculinity is not about being right. It is about being present. Because, Steph continues, anyone can be with someone when everything is easy. But being with someone when the truth is uncomfortable, when the entire world is judging, this is true marriage. You can perceive when there is a person who understands that commitment is a repeated choice, that marriage is not won once, It is chosen every day. For the 50-plus audience, this is everything. Because this is the generation that grew up hearing that a perfect marriage is the goal, that a relationship should look beautiful. That uncomfortable truth should be kept. And here is a couple that breaks this. That says, no. Our marriage is this: honest confession, silent defense, continuous choice. You can perceive when there is a message that resonates with a generation that knows that perfection is a myth. Because many people over 50 years old are in marriages for 20, 30, 40 years, and they know this is not possible without honesty, without vulnerability, without an admission of sacrifice. And when they see Steph and Ayesha this publicly, something happens. They feel less alone. They feel validated. They feel understood. Because if a couple so public, so observed, can be honest and still be well, then maybe we can too. You can perceive when there is a moment that is liberating. When a person sees a model of a real marriage and understands, I do not need to pretend. I do not need to be perfect. I need to be honest. And this is what Steph and Ayesha created with this situation. They did not create a scandal. They created a model. They created permission for others to be honest too. Many women began to speak after Ayesha's confession. Many said, I felt this too. I sacrificed too. I also sometimes ask myself, what if? And no one condemned them. Because Ayesha opened a door. Because she showed that admitting this did not mean not loving your husband. It just meant being honest about being human. You can perceive when there is an impact that is generational, when the action of one person opens the possibility for millions of others. And then there is the larger question. Why did their marriage survive when others did not? The answer is simple. Because both chose to be there. Not because it was easy. Because it was right. Steph could have left. He could have agreed with the critics. He could have asked for a divorce. He could have distanced himself publicly. But he did not. Because he knew the truth. Because he knew that the woman who confesses to him is being honest precisely because she loves him. Because she is trying to process sacrifice not to leave, but to remain with integrity. And Ayesha could have apologized. She could have retracted. She could have disappeared from public view. But she did not. Because she knew that the truth mattered. Because she knew that honesty was the most beautiful thing she could give to the marriage. That keeping it for another 14 years would have been a slow death. You can perceive when there are two people who choose honesty even when it is difficult, who choose vulnerability even when the entire world is watching. This is rare. This is sacred. This is what marriage can be when both refuse to pretend. For the 50-plus audience, there is also an understanding that this is what really lasts. Not a marriage that looks perfect on social media. A marriage that can contain difficult truth and remain standing. Not a relationship that never questions. A relationship that questions, confesses, processes, and continues. You can perceive when there is hope that is offered. When a person who has been in a marriage for 20, 30, 40 years sees this and understands, there is still time. There is still opportunity. I can still be honest. Because marriage is not a permanent prisoner of old decisions. It is a continuous opportunity to choose again, to be honest again, to renew again. And this is what Steph and Ayesha demonstrated. They did not begin the process wanting to be in public. Ayesha simply confessed in a private podcast, but the world made it public. And when the world tried to use it as a weapon to destroy the marriage remained standing. Because it was real. Because it was honest. because it was based on true choice, not false appearance. You can perceive when there is a moment. That is a turning of the age. When the narrative about marriage changes from "it should look perfect" to "it should be honest." And this is the legacy that Steph and Ayesha are leaving. It is not a legacy of a perfect marriage. It is a legacy of a marriage that admits truth. That can contain "I sacrificed" and "I am happy" simultaneously. That can have a man who defends silently because he is so secure that he does not need to defend out loud. For the 50-plus generation, this is everything that is necessary. Because they know that perfection is a myth. They know that a lasting marriage is about choice. They know that vulnerability is strength. And when they see a couple like Steph and Ayesha model this for the entire world, something changes internally. They feel less alone. They feel less inadequate. They feel more human. And this is what it really means to leave a legacy. It is not money. It is not fame. It is not even a perfect marriage. It is permission. It is a model. It is hope. It is Steph saying to the world, "We are good over here." Not because the marriage is perfect, but because it is honest. It is Ayesha saying to the world, "You actually don't know what you want. And this is okay. This is human. This is valid. You can perceive when there is a moment that is transformational not just for two, but for many." And this is exactly what happened.